Well, I'm Paul Johnson, the eldest of the Johnson sons, of Granny's sons. I'm doing something in her honor today. When we were kids growing up, we would perhaps be out playing, and there were 5 of us boys, and so she always had at least one to choose from. When this kind of thing happened, she would come and cut one of us from the herd and drag us by our figurative ear to some place like Hemphill Wells or Dunlap's or Brown's Varsity Shop or Lena Stevens, and we'd have to suffer through getting fitted for a new suit. And one thing that she always made sure of is that we got a distinctive tie, a tie that was bright or colorful, and she always told me that I should get something with blue in it to go with my eyes. And so I went out, and at the time that I was growing up, a lot of these trips occurred during the 60s and the 70s, and often those ties would be almost psychedelic. So in her honor, I went out and got a Jerry Garcia tie, which is sort of psychedelic to remember Granny. But those were great one-on-one times with Granny, and it wasn't fun making the memory at the time, but it's fun recalling it. Billy Joe Reagan, Billy Joe Johnson, Joe Johnson, Joe and Lowell. That's one word. Joe, Jojo, Dodie, Mommy, Mom, Granny. You may have known her by one or more or perhaps all of these names. Ever since my son Jeff, her first grandchild, was born, I've called her Granny. To me, it's an endearing term, and it's the name that I'll use for her here. And I'm going to use her name in a slightly modified text that you will recognize. From 1 Corinthians 13. And as I read, every time that you hear the name Granny, I want you to substitute in your mind whatever name for her that you find most personally endearing. Granny was patient. Granny was kind. Granny did not envy, and Granny did not boast. Granny was not rude or arrogant. Granny was not self-seeking. Granny was slow to anger, and Granny kept no record of wrongs. Granny challenged injustice, and Granny rejoiced whenever the truth prevailed. Granny always protected those she loved. Granny was always faithful. Granny always trusted. Granny was always hopeful. And as we all witnessed, Granny always persevered. Granny always loved. Granny was love.
I'm David. I am son number 2. A couple of years ago, on August 16th, 2008, I wrote Mom a letter. And what was true then is infinitely more so today. Dear Mom, I miss you. Even though Trevetta and I and the girls have lived away from Lubbock for 20 years, I still miss you. I miss helping you in the kitchen. I miss your cheese enchiladas and your Sunday after church roast and your homemade vanilla ice cream. I miss German chocolate cake on my birthday. What I don't miss is coffee that's twice as strong as it should be, or fried chicken livers cleverly hidden under loads of cream gravy. I miss being your favorite trash taker outer. I miss you being there in our home every day when I got home from school. And even though I wouldn't have admitted it at the time, I missed you picking me up each day at McKenzie Junior High. I miss calling you Mommy, and not worrying what the other kids thought. Unfortunately, in junior high, I started worrying what the other kids thought. I miss being read to before bedtime. I miss your tomato soup with bits of tomato and melted butter and pepper. I do not miss having to go with you to Dunlap's or Lena Stevens to buy a suit or slacks or blue jeans. Having my mom and some sales lady tug on the waist of my pants to see how they fit was one of the most traumatizing experiences of my childhood. I miss the special little things we did at Christmas. I miss peppermint sticks pushed into oranges so we could suck out the juice. I miss pomegranates. I miss pressing cloves into an orange and hanging it from a string in the living room. I miss Perry Como and Mitch Miller. I miss you waking us up on Christmas morning to see what Santa brought. I miss the way you loved me so that I would always love myself. I miss hearing you say you have a tender heart. I love you, David.
My name is Scott. I'm son number 3. If you talk to any of us boys, you'll know that we all feel the same way, that our mom had an uncanny knack for making us feel incredibly special, like we were the only ones in the room, and how someone could do that and still wrangle 5 children at one time. I don't know how. I'm sorry, guys, but I'm still convinced that I am the favorite. It was so convincing to me. It was particularly convincing to me when I was in the 3rd grade. We had a school project, and we all planted acorns in a milk carton. And we waited, and we waited, and we waited. And there's only one seed that sprouted out of 30 kids, and that was mine. And for the teacher, I would say that wasn't a very good class project. But for me, I was so proud of that little tree. And I took it home, and it just had 2 big leaves on it and a stick. And my mom suggested that we plant it in the yard, so we did. And that tree thrived. And if you go by today, 5502 20th Street in Lubbock, a block from Lubbock Christian College, and you look to the left of the house, you'll see a tree that's about 40 feet tall, and it's about this big around, and it is a strong tree, and it's a beautiful oak tree. And when my parents moved to Nashville Avenue, I thought the best way to comfort them was for them to take a little bit of home with them. So I took an acorn from that tree, and I planted it, and it grew, and we put that tree at their house, and that tree's not 40 feet tall, it's about 35 feet tall. But it's another beautiful, strong oak tree. And that tree has a lot of acorns on it. This is one right here. And for some strange reason, my mother several years ago started sending me these acorns. And I'd get a box, and it would be full of these. We'd come to visit, and she'd ask me if I wanted to take some home. And If you go to our house today, you'll find hidden in little plastic bags a bunch of these acorns. And I know what she was trying to say. She was trying to say, go, be strong, plant yourself well, be big and strong, and multiply, and go out and be the best that you can possibly be. And what she was also saying is that the gift that she and my dad gave us go on from generation. They do. And just like these acorns, they benefit my generation. They'll benefit the generation of my children and their children to come. We will always and forever be blessed by our mom.
I'm Bob. I'm son number 4, and I'm taller than Scott. I promised myself I would write something down because I thought that I would go blank when I got up here. I didn't write anything down. I wrote it down several times and trashed it. So what I'm telling you is from my heart. I tried to characterize in my mind what it is that my mother did for me, represented to me. Many of you may know about the 5 love languages. My mother spoke all of them fluently. She gave each of us the ability to love and be loved in many, many different ways, from scratching our backs till we fell asleep, or snuggling us, to giving us words of affirmation when we tried on goofy ties, to what I think of when I think of her. As I was a young child, my formative years were very important. And as in elementary school, I would stumble my way home from school. Every day I would find something, a gift from my mother. They would range from horny toads to devil's claws to shiny rocks. And every day I stumbled into the back of the house and I would give her these gifts. And she knew that they were nothing and that they weren't important. But every day she received them with a smile and a thank you. And every day she made me feel like I had given her the best gift she'd ever gotten. And it wasn't until I was an adult that I realized what she was doing. She was teaching me how to be generous. She was teaching me how to give as she had to me and to my brothers all those years. She was teaching me how to accept gifts from the heart. And she was teaching me that I was the most important thing in her life. And if you ask my brothers, they'll all tell you that they were the most important thing in her life. And she taught us all that, somehow, that we were all loved, that we were all accepted, that each one of us mattered the most to her.